organized around 3 speakers and then also a discussion with the audience. Just before we get started, and just as a matter of protocol, I wanted to let you know that we will be recording the session as well as live streaming it. So if anyone is uncomfortable, you are very welcome to keep off your video and change your name as well in the session. So I'm going to start recording now if there's no problems with that. Before we start, I will very quickly give a short introduction to the global tapestry of alternatives. For some of you, this might be something that you know from previous times.
Jag har stängt av min video, men
I
jag behöver inte
also,
byta.
again, a reminder, please mute your microphones. I also wanted to let people know that we will be having this translated into French and Spanish. So if you would prefer to listen in French or Spanish, you can go into the interpretation room. For those who are listening in English, you should also go into the interpretation room for English when people talk in French. And you do that at the bottom of the screen. There's a little globe and a button which says interpretation. So, whoops, I am sharing the wrong screen. I want to just very quickly give you a short introduction to the global tapestry of alternatives and to the work that we are doing here today. And let's see if I can get that working.
I didn't hear what you said. I was shouting on.
So this is part of a series from the Global Tapestry of Alternatives on dialogues on alternatives in the time of global crisis. As we know, we are facing multiple global crises on the ecological, the socioeconomic, political, cultural, and personal levels with different impacts on biodiversity, socioeconomic issues like inequality, as well as the mental health crisis that we face right now. On top of all of that, we have COVID-19. And that, of course, has many and substantial interlinked impacts on all of the other crises that we're trying to deal with. People are responding to it in several ways. Part of that is about resistance to capitalism, to statism, to patriarchy. And so in that, we look to these kind of resistance projects as part of the global tapestry of alternatives, but also the openings that come up in terms of other ways of being, knowing, working, and dreaming. And that we must say that there is a richness to what is happening in the world, and today's webinar touches on that as well. So just to give you some of the examples, Ubuntu from Southern Africa, When Revere, Ecofeminism, Ecosocialism, and other practices around the world which we want to explore and celebrate with you through these webinar series. So the Global Tapestry of Alternatives is a process. We are not a project and not an organization, but rather it is about creating spaces of collaboration, learning, and exchange. It's about trying to create solidarity and sharing between these different alternatives that happen, ultimately with stimulating collective visions for a just world. This is the website. If you haven't actually engaged with us in the past and would like to know more, please do visit the Global Tapestry of Alternatives website. We will also be sharing a recording of the session on the website afterwards. We also are participating in the upcoming World Social Forum, which starts tomorrow. And if you're interested in knowing more on this, you can see our activities at globaltapestryofalternatives.org/WSF. So coming to today and the webinar series that we have, it is part of really facilitating this interaction and sharing between researchers, activists, scholars, mobilizers, practitioners, and people who just actually want to learn more about what's happening in the world. We've had 15 webinars to date. And as I said, you can find these on our website. And that brings us to where we are today, which is the 16th of our webinars on African ecofeminist alternatives. This is really important and a topic that I think is very timely, with a lot of discussions about what's happening with climate change, with trying to find the energy transition, and to bring it back to an African perspective in terms of what is needed in different contexts. What does it mean that we actually continue to have development whilst at the same time ensuring that we're reducing our carbon emissions, and the need for that just, resilient, post-extractivist future. So we're very happy today to be presenting and sharing this webinar with you. How we will be organizing the day is we have 3 guest speakers who will be talking, and during their presentations, I would like to invite you to first introduce yourselves by writing your names in the chat, and also where you're from. But also, if you have comments and questions to the speaker, please do share it within the chat, which will be open for everyone to see. And then after our speakers have had their time to present, we will then create an opportunity for me to take those questions forward and relay it to our speakers to answer. I also, before we start, wanted to say a particular warm welcome to the students from Tumaco in Colombia who are at the University of Nariño. Some of them are joining us at 7 o'clock in the morning to participate in this webinar. So it's nice to have a lot of students here as well. So we now move into the really important stuff of the day, and it's my pleasure to invite our 3 speakers. We have Zoe Randriamaro, who is from Madagascar, and she's a representative of WoMin. And then we have Ange Bamei, who is from the Ivory Coast, and Nonhle Mbuthuma, who is joining us from South Africa, my hometown. We're going to start with a short presentation from Zoe, who will sort of contextualize the work that is being done and what it means to think about an ecofeminist alternatives. Zoe, I will hand over to you and also open your presentation now.
Thank you very much, Vasana. It is a pleasure and honor to be part of this important conversation. So let me start first by saying a few words about what WoMin is. WoMin was launched in October 2013, and it is an African ecofeminist alliance which works alongside organizations of women, peasants, and mining impacted communities, and in partnership with other sympathetic organizations to make visible and publicize the impacts of extractives on peasant and working class women, to support women's organizing, movement building, and solidarity, and to advance in alliance with numerous others, an African post-extractivist, ecologically just, women-centered alternative to the dominant destructive model of development. So I'm sure everyone knows where we are coming from. And what do we mean when we are talking about ecofeminist alternatives to development? In our work to promote such development alternatives, we start from the position that such alternatives to the dominant development system must be constructed and articulated from below by rural and working class African women who are uniquely positioned to do so because they are directly affected by this extractivist development system. And this is because they are at the front line of the struggles against the patriarchal and extractivist economic system that relies on the relentless domination of nature and continues to prevail at the expense of women's rights, livelihoods, and unpaid care labor. So we share the views of many other sisters across the global South who believe that the alternatives actually live and breathe in the histories and everyday beliefs and practices of women in the global South. And when we want to deal with ecofeminist alternatives to development, we need to start by decolonizing and reconstructing the way we have been thinking about development from an African ecofeminist perspective. And
So
this
do let me know if
implies,
you want me to change the slides.
yes, yes. I think you need to change the slide. Yeah, again. Yes, next, next, next. Okay. Oh, no, no, now you have gone too far. Can you, yes. So when we talk about African ecofeminist development alternative, we need to start by decolonizing and reconstructing the way we have been thinking about development. And this implies that we need to rediscover past practices, but also worldviews and traditional ways of living that have been eroded by colonization, neocolonialism, and by the imposition of the neoliberal paradigm. Next, please.
So sorry to trouble you again. Can you also talk a bit slower for the interpreters? Thank you.
Oh, sorry. And among such worldviews and such African philosophy is the concept of Ubuntu, which we can translate by I am because we are. It's an African philosophy which rests on the belief in a universal bond of sharing that connects all humanity, that is a person through other people. And it means in a language called Guni, it means the quality of being human. The philosophy holds that we owe our selfhood to others and calls on us to mirror our humanity for and to each other. It sits contrary to the emphasis of the Western world on individualism and individual human rights, and it is asking instead that we put the interest of the community ahead of the individual.
So sorry to interrupt, but there's a chat message that the French interpretation is not going through.
So shall I stop for a while?
Just sort that out.
Maybe let's just give it a moment to see what's happening with the French interpretation and make sure it's working.
Can others hear the French interpretation?
Ashish, I could be a backup if you wish for French.
No, we have two people already, but for some reason it's not working.
I could hear, yeah, in French I could hear, yeah.
Okay, so it seems like some people are picking up the French interpretation, and it could be an issue with the system you have, whether you actually have access to the interpretation.
Jonathan is saying is maintenance oui means I suppose can hear now, yes?
It means yes, now we can hear.
Okay, great.
Maintenant, oui.
Okay, so we can continue, and I will go back to your presentation.
Okay. Can you go next slide, please? Click. Yes, okay, that's where I was. No, please go back. Yes. So Ubuntu sits contrary to the emphasis of the Western world on individualism and individual human rights. And it is asking instead that we put the interest of the community ahead of the individual. And in recognizing the humanity of others, we activate behavior imbued with respect, tolerance, sharing, empathy, and love. In other words, we embrace feminist values. Next slide, please. Some say that Ubuntu also consolidates the human, natural, and spiritual tripartite, which allows Africans to transpose the same moral obligations to nature. Ubuntu is also the response to the climate and ecological crisis, because it prescribes our duty to take care of nature and to proceed to what a French philosopher has called the humanization of the earth, which doesn't mean the domination of the earth by humans, but which implies that we cannot fully realize our humanity without the consciousness about our responsibilities to protect Mother Earth and to safeguard the natural heritage for future generations. Next slide, please. From a political perspective, a major political pillar of African ecofeminist alternatives to development is Pan-Africanism, an ideology and political movement which has its origins in the struggles of the African people against enslavement and colonization. Pan-Africanism aims to unify all Africans on the continent and in the diaspora, and to reclaim African peoples from colonization, neo-colonization, and imperialism. So even as we know that the Pan-African institutions, such as the Pan-African Parliament and the African Union, have failed to offer a really transformative vision of the continent, and that states are pitted against one another for elusive foreign investment, loans, and the continuing scramble for African natural resources. The Pan-Africanism that we are talking about is rooted in the vibrant Pan-African civil society activism and solidarity, which goes across the boundaries of the African nation states. Our Pan-Africanism draws on African philosophy, values, politics, practices, and histories, and is built from below by African citizens, and not on the ideas and interests of corporations, international financial institutions, and the African political elites. Next slide, please. The Pan-Africanism on which we are founding our movement is coming out of a new dreaming about the Africa we want, which draws on African philosophy, values, politics, and also on the solidarity of African women across the continent to stop the mega extractivist projects, to condemn repression and violence, and demand climate justice. And this struggle, this common struggle in solidarity by African women must be our lodestar, building our movement and drawing from a long tradition of progressive Pan-Africanism. This unified dialoguing, imagining, organizing solidarity And the action of African women across nations represents an important strand of living, breathing, Pan-Africanist and ecofeminist alternative to development. Thank you for listening to me.
Wonderful. Thank you very much so for that introduction and also giving us a vision for Africa that we all should commit to and work to support. We now have the opportunity to hear from two other activists and people who are working in the field, and I would like to now give the floor to Ange David Baime, who is from Grain and based in the Ivory Coast. So, Ange David, I hand over to you for a few words on the topic.
Thank you, Vasna, and also thank you, Zoo. Unfortunately, due to the internet network, I would like to keep out my camera to allow us to have a good conversation. And maybe if it is need, I can put my camera. Maybe first things I can apologize because I'm a Francophone. I'm not an English speaker, so maybe it can be sometimes difficult to understand what I said, but I'm open to to discuss. And I would like
Thank you very much, Ange David, for doing this in English. Part of the reason is that we can also reach out to our Spanish speakers through interpretation. So, but please feel free if you need to switch to French. We'll figure it out and have someone type it in English in the chat.
Okay, so I'm very glad, and also Grain is very happy to contribute in that reflection, because since long help to move with the support we are bringing for ecofeminism in Africa. We reach a good partner who is WoMin, and also thank you to you, Vasna organization, GTA. The issue of land and food system, it is a key key issue, because first of all, if you go in many countries today in Africa, due to the IMF project or the IMF plan, World Bank plan, and particularly, for example, for World Bank, this concept on doing business who is promoted in Africa and in many countries in West Africa particularly, you will find that a lot of policy around land issue is based on market. So they want to privatize land, they want to privatize food, and this kind of policy, who is is promoted in Africa, is something who undermine our philosophy of Ubuntu. Because I think Zoo described Ubuntu in terms of how I'm not someone, if you as a human being, you are also not in the same phase with me. And unfortunately, this concept who bring us to idea of humanity, who bring idea of collectively, is now undermined by policy and neoliberal policy in Africa, who is to promote individualism, who is to promote self consideration. So all this issue is also bring in the issue concerning land, and we face a lot of exclusion in terms of land property, for example, for women in rural area. And unfortunately, we also face a time where our African government, based on that neoliberalism policy pushed by capitalism, they bring and they come with new law, new policy, new regulation, to control land, to control, food system, to control our life. Because, for example, now in terms of COVID issue in our country, you will see more inequality, because it is ongoing question, but for example, the issue concerning vaccination, how it will come not in the way that to allow or to help many citizenship to have to receive support, but to create more inequality in our society. So from our perspective and fighting with groups like you, promoting ecofeminism, promoting just alternative, we face a time where the food system, in terms of how we can farm, how we can get access to land, it is undermined by this kind of policy. So for us, we have, for the post-extractive future, for the post-extractive time, start to reorganize ourselves with the key importance of that concept of Ubuntu. We will not get a good result for our people if, for example, the issue concerning energy is not well understand and it's not well organized, because we face a lot of big dams, for example, who is construct in some area where the people are so poor that they cannot afford that electricity who is produced. And sometimes you can listen from the politician that these dams or this coal plant it is built for the community, it is built for the people, but unfortunately the cost to access to that service is something who is not affordable for this kind of things. We also face, for example, around a lot of big plantation, big palm plantation or big rubber plantation, how the community, the population, the women are faced a lot of violence based on the fact that for the owner of this big plantation, like the multinational, you can see Vilma, you can see Siat, we can see Heracles Farm, how they come in many countries in Africa and grab the land and control the land and even decide what kind of food community around them are able to get access. So all these kind of things, we think today we have to consolidate our energy, we have to consolidate our strength and promote Ubuntu, because it is the center of our development. It is the center of our future if we want to move from this period of mining, period of extractivism, period of cause a lot of damage in terms of livelihood to community, and go in that place where we can easily share, we can easily mutualize our energy and get access to a good way or a good standard of living to our community. I think as civil society, it is our responsibility to start thinking and to go to that level of thing. And one of the key things is we need to start thinking how to work collectively to destroy the patriarchy. Because, for example, in community where women can't access to land, it is based on the fact that sometimes, for example, for men, they have to perpetuate that system. They have to control, the land and all the resources who is bringing or who is coming from that ownership of the land. So we need to destroy it. And this is one of the key things if we want to reach the post-extractive future, who will be a good place for our women and our future generation. That is my first thought I would like to share, and I'm open for the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ange David. I think that was a really important intervention of situating sort of the actions that need to happen and that are happening in Africa within the global political economy, because we have to fight on different levels, and it's partly local, but it's definitely the global as well. And I would also like to say that in the chat, you had a couple of comments just noting that your English is brilliant. So I think you have nothing to worry about there. Before we take comments and questions to Ange, David and Zoe, it's really my privilege to invite our third speaker, Nonhle Mbuthuma, who is joining us from South Africa. Nonhle is one of the founders of the Amadiba Crisis Committee, and that is a group in the Eastern Cape in South Africa who have worked to actually fight against destructivist mining in the region. So Nonhle, I hand it to you. It's lovely to have you here. Thank you. Maybe just check that you are unmuted.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Do you hear me now? Okay. Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you so much for inviting me here. Yes, my name is Nonhle from South Africa in Eastern Cape in Pondoland. Pondoland is one of the known area because of the beauty, because of so-called Ubuntu. When you talk about Ubuntu, we have a history where I live. What do we mean when we said Ubuntu? We do even have songs, the traditional songs that when you see the stranger, don't chase. You must take care of. You must treat as your brother. That's how we understand Ubuntu, and we learn Ubuntu from our traditional leaders, because we are living in a society where it's under communal land. It's under the traditional leaders, the kings and the chiefs. The King Fago, he is the one, he was teaching us about Ubuntu in Pondoland. And one of the areas right now, Ubuntu is disappeared, it's gone. When they see the other human being, they see something they must think it's a rubbish. But here in Pondoland, it doesn't matter you are black or you are white or you are red, you are a human being. But unfortunately, as we still have that Ubuntu, but we are facing with quite tremendous pressure with so-called development. Because when they see the communities are living like us in a place where we're still sharing everything, we're sharing food, we're sharing laughing, we're sharing everything. They said that we are not modernized. Now we are not being developed. Now they want us to be developed, where they just impose the mining to say that mining will create jobs. They undermine the existing livelihood that we have. Like they don't take that it's a development. And when we try to argue, because we are not an expert when it comes to argue those things, but when it comes to land, as people that we've grown up there, we lived there for centuries, we like professors, because we know that once you lose the land, you lose your identity. But we never go to any university, but when it comes to land, we know everything. That is why when they try to impose the mining in 22 kilometers stretch along the coast where our ancestors are lying, have been graves, and we are farming, we do everything, our lives is there. But they just, our own government see that that life is nothing, because they said mining is going to uplift the economy. That means the local economy is not so important. The important economy is a national economy, because right now, as we said, we don't want mining, and we're not saying that we do want benefits. No, we said we don't want mining, because we know that mining is a short term. And this mining they want to open here, it's just only 22 years. And we ask ourselves, after 22 years, how are we going to survive? Because right now, where I'm sitting, we still have the seeds that it's been transferred to the generation after the generation. Now, once the mining is taking place, that means all the seeds will be disappeared. And we know that there's quite a lot of damage that it will be irreversible. As mothers, as women, we know that once you lose the land, Ubuntu within a second is gone. It brought quite a lot of the things that you never experienced before. And like the crime, drug abuse, and all sorts of stuff. But at the moment, we are still have Ubuntu. If my chicken go to my neighbor, the neighbor just go and bring my chicken. That's called Ubuntu. And if my neighbor see my child just walking and I'm not there, is taking care of my own child and is feeding that child without even asking, where is your mother? Because that's what Ubuntu, you know. But when they push the mining, they just forget that we're going to lose Ubuntu, which is irreplaceable. But what they are saying, they said that they will compensate us. But what we're saying, you cannot compensate Ubuntu. No way. Not even a chance that you can compensate Ubuntu. Once Ubuntu, it's gone, it's gone. It cannot come back. And we said that we don't want mining because mining is a short term, because we do have alternative where we live. We don't understand why our government is not understanding when we said that we do have alternative where we live. It's agriculture. When we talk about agriculture, we are not talking about monoculture where one types of crop is going to take the whole area and then people will be relocated. We are talking about permanent agriculture where we grow a variety of crops as we speak, because we learn that a healthy mind in a healthy body. Right now, as we are facing with the COVID-19 in South Africa, where I live, it was the place where our government was using a propaganda to say that we are the poor of the poorest. But you can see, if we are the poor of the poorest, why right now we haven't even received one death related with COVID-19? It's because of the healthy food that we are eating, because we are eating the fresh food, we are eating the food that is coming from our own garden. Because this COVID-19, it just catches people so much because of the immune system is so weak. When your immune system is weak, it's very easy to be catched by this COVID-19. Now, they just try by all means to push us where we're going to be dependent from the state. And beside the agriculture, it's not only agriculture that is alternative to mining where we live, also tourism. And when we talk about tourism, we are talking about ecotourism, because also tourism can evict quite a lot of our communities. Now we are talking about ecotourism, where we just use our resources that we have, like horse and riding and the training the local guides, using our village-based accommodation where it's attracting, you know, it's a very attractive tourism that we are running right now. Globally, tourists are coming all over just to experience our culture, our history. You know, that is the kind of tourism that we are talking about, because we cannot talk about hotels. Tourists are coming from hotels, there are hotels everywhere. Why we think when we talk about tourism, we need to put hotels? No, let's do something that is different. That is why we said we don't want mining. But it was not an easy task to say no to mining, because we receive quite a lot of threats. There is also involving the bribes. There is also the assassination. To fight to defend your land, you need to make sure that you are focusing, you know what you want. You're not going to be changed because there's so many advisors coming from outside, and some even NGOs, you know, they are coming with their own agendas. That is what our communities, they must be very aware what they want to achieve when they're starting their own struggle. That is what we are doing right now. Also, the government is trying by all means to use the police to fight our communities. And the police are the police that they were supposed to protect the citizen. But you can see right now, when it comes to mining, the police are not protecting the citizens, but are protecting the private companies. Because you can see when there's a public consultation, this is where you see quite a number of police. And it's obvious, it's intimidation to those poor communities. When you see number of police, you know, you don't even know what you can say. And as I'm saying that, there's quite a lot of intimidation, and there is not even a justice that is being done from those people are already been assassinated. Even myself, I've received quite a lot of number of SMSs that are intimidating me, are harassing me. But it doesn't mean that I can change my mind because of I'm scared of those SMSs. But I know that those SMSs, they are true, because I've already seen quite a lot of people dying here. But it doesn't change my mind that I will change to say that let me go for money, because I know that one thing, money will be run out, but the land will never run out. As we are talking right now, we know that minerals from the earth start diminishing, start getting disappeared. Right now, our own government is going to the ocean, where they also confusing our communities to say that this is called ocean economy. And our communities, when they think about ocean economy, they are thinking about fish, crayfish, mussels. No, it's not about fish and crayfish. It's about deep bottom down of our ocean, where they're going to drill gas. They're going to do all the things that is going to destroy our ecosystem. That is why I always says that if we want to protect our Mother Earth, because right now we are facing with global warming, we are facing with the climate change, and they don't even bother. What they bother at the moment is to recover the economy. If we always talking about recover the economy, who's going to benefit from this economy if we are not looking the way we are doing to recover this economy, if it's not damaging the Mother Earth? That is why I always says that, yes, nature, it doesn't need us as human beings, but us as human beings, we need nature for survival. We really need to take care of the nature. Thank you. Let me stop right there. I'm open for questions.
Thank you very much, Nonhle. I think this is a case where you have truly spoken truth to power. And I think it's also a really important reminder to all of us that in some places in the world, like South Africa, you are not, it is your own physical body which is part of the struggle, and that we all have to recognize the effort and work that all of these activists are putting in. We've had 3 very inspiring and I think also thought-provoking presentations. So what I'd like to do now is open up for a discussion, and we have a few questions in the chat already for our speakers, but I would also like to reiterate that please do put any comments or questions that you have to the speakers in the chat, and then I will go through them systematically and take the questions as they come. So the first question, which is to Zoe, is just about defining ecofeminism. And there's a point made that there's different ways that people think about ecofeminism. And how would you also tie into the kind of analysis that someone like Vandana Shiva does? So maybe if you want to say a few more words, Zoe, on ecofeminism itself.
Yes, this is not my preferred exercise. Because, you know, there are ecofeminisms and there are socialisms, and, you know, defining all the isms is not my preferred exercise. But anyway, I think basically, I'm talking about what I understand from WoMin's definition of ecofeminism. I think we are very much aligned with the definition given by Vandana Shiva, because that was part of the question, I think. But basically, what is very important from my understanding of ecofeminism is the recognition that women and nature are subject to the same oppression by the patriarchal extractivist development system. So there is this shared experience of oppression, but there is also the recognition that we are dependent on nature, as Nonhle said very clearly, and as is also made clear in the philosophy of Ubuntu. We depend on nature for our survival. So we cannot pretend that we can dominate or exploit nature. We are connected and we are interdependent with nature. I think that's my understanding of ecofeminism.
Great, thank you very much. And I think it's a very big question. Ange, David, would you like to add?
Yes. I think this perspective, and maybe to try to also add in the political line concerning ecofeminism. And I think in the chat box, someone write that it is also issue concerning how the women's in the center, you know, in the center of that, and have kind of connectivity with. And maybe the ad I would like to put is the fact that we know, for example, if you take the issue concerning climate change, how with the fact that in rural community, in rural area, we have a lot of women face, for example, the lack of water with all, you know, the complication is bring. And in our patriarchy society, if I would like to point like that, sometimes it is a woman who go, for example, to fish water. And this fact that patriarchy society, it make a lot of burden issue on the shoulders of the women, because they have to go far and far to get access to water. They have, you know, to take care of the relative. And even when, for example, you face in some community where, for example, they face droughts or they face erosion or they face calamity, most of the time we lost. For example, in Mozambique, we face Uragan, Idai, and a lot of women pass away because they are the one who taking care at home of the elders, you know. And when, for example, this disaster is coming, the men are the first one to run away or to climb in the trees to save their life, letting the women with the elders in the you know, in the house, and we face a lot of catastrophe with a lot of women pass away. So the climate change issue and the climate calamity bring more and more pressure on women. And regarding or analyzing ecofeminism, women need more and more and more attention, you know. So it is bring that relationship where it also go on the throwing away of capitalism, the throwing away of, you know, neoliberalism policy, the throwing away of this patriarchy system to allow women to be more resilient in that society. So ecofeminism is also a political concept. It is not only the fact that we are related to nature or we are related to Mother Earth. It is a political concept who need to help us to put in the center of our decision making the issue concerning women and all the undermine bringing by the neoliberal system. That is what I would like to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Ange.
And if I can add a last word to
Yes.
what Ange just said, in another webinar, I affirmed that the future must be ecofeminist. That's the only way. So
yeah,
I hope
yeah,
it helps.
Yeah. That is true. That is true. You know.
Thank you both for those inputs, and I think this is a deep and ongoing discussion, but I think also the point Ange David made about the care work, the unrecognized work that women are often doing as a political issue is something really important. We have quite a few questions in the chat already, so I'm going to just go through them, and where it's, you know, please feel free to comment on it. The next question is about a question to Zoe again, thanking you for your presentation on Ubuntu and the importance of Pan-Africanism. You've briefly talked about African institutions that fail to support Pan-African ecofeminist alternatives. Can you speak of concrete Pan-African initiatives that have had a positive support, and what, in your opinion, needs to be done on a Pan-African scale?
Okay,
big questions
yeah,
to you,
yeah. No, it's I'm happy that that people have been prompted to ask such question, even if these are big questions. But anyway, you are asking me to give example of successful Pan-African initiatives. Is that what you mean? So there are myriads of them, but not in the institutionalized Pan-African space. I mean, the processes which are controlled and initiated by the Pan-African institutions. The positive initiatives, Pan-African initiatives, are rather found in the civil society space, where, and in the citizen, initiatives taken by the citizens themselves in solidarity, to tackle issues that are of critical importance for all African countries together. I mean, I cannot think of one specific example, but my point is really also that Pan-Africanism is a process that we must build. It's not something that is there, and then if you look carefully, then you will find it. It is something that has to be constructed from below by citizens, African citizens themselves, and across the boundaries that have been, the walls that have been put between different African nations through the competitions for attracting foreign investment. And I mean, Pan-Africanism will never happen through the common market, even if we are, if the powers that be tell us so. With the creation of Zleka, this African free market big. I mean, I don't think this will, Pan-Africanism exists because some people have put their lives on the line. Some people have died for Pan-Africanism. Do you think people will put their lives on the line for the common market? So again, Pan-Africanism is something that we need to construct together based on shared values, and in order to reach a common goal that goes beyond economic interests.
Just a reminder to people to please keep their microphones mute when they're not part of the speaking list. Thank you, Zoe. I want to move on to the next question, and this is to Nonhle. You have already talked about the ways that communities are working together in harmony. And maybe if I can ask you to say a bit more about that, but how do we create this common ground for taking action? So maybe Nonhle, I can ask you to start and just say something about how you have organized with the Amadiba Crisis Committee, getting people together to take action and creating common ground.
It's through. It's a challenging, because in order to make people to be on the common ground, you need to inform people. You need to be closer to the people. You need to update people of what is going on in the world. Information, knowledge is very important for our struggle. That's how we manage to defeat the lies and the propaganda, because this development is a propaganda actually of taking away our land from us in the name of development. But we defeat that propaganda to educate our people, to tell them the truth, what's going on. And to do that is not an easy task. As we said that we have a right to say no. And also the right to say no, we also have the right to say yes at the same time. Those rights are working together. But our government is always thinking that the right to say yes, it's a right to be consulted. But that right is not the right to be consulted. It's a right to choose. It's a right to decide in which way you want to live. That is why right now we just been forced. Anyway, we didn't have an option to take our own government to court not the mining companies, because we know that mining companies are coming in South Africa given authorization by our own government. But who knows our regulations? Who knows the laws? It's our own state. That state is the one they're supposed to protect us. That is why here in Kolobeni, we take our own government to court to say that we have a right to choose, we have a right to decide. And in 2018, this is where we won a case that it was stated clear that the judgment says that before any mining application can be granted, the community must give a consent, which is a full, prior, and informed consent. And the consent is something else to our government. They don't want to listen that. It's there to African countries, those laws, but they put under the table only putting that mining companies, they just come and consult. Consultation, it doesn't mean anything, because it's where somebody is coming to tell you that I'm here to do this and you have no right to say anything. That is how they take an advantage. That is why we force our own government that this FPIC must be utilized by our own government. And right now, although the government of South Africa is appealing that judgment, that no, if the community given a right to give a consent, it will cause a chaos. That means there will be no mining in South Africa. That means they compromise us in order to please the cooperatives. That's what they are doing at the moment, because what is important is to please the private companies than to please their own citizens. This is the situation at the moment, but we're not going to give up. As they trying to appeal, we're going to fight this all the way to Constitutional Court, all the way to African Court. And if we fail there, at the end, the land, it belongs to the people. If people, they understand that the land is theirs, there will be no problem. But we gave more power to the state, that the state is owning the land. No, the state is not owning the land. The state is looking the land after for the people. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Nonhle. And I think that's also really important. There's also been a couple of follow-up questions on that. You've talked about, the need to share information and let people know what's going on. People have also asked in the chat how also can people in the global north and elsewhere support the work that is being done at the local level. So maybe that's also something that we can come to a bit later on. I want to move to a different question now, and someone has raised the question of what does climate change mean for the work that we're doing, for communities, and for Ubuntu itself? If any one of the three of you would like to make a reflection on that. So the effect of climate change especially, and then also with Ubuntu.
Maybe I can maybe start. And I think this issue concerning climate change is also related to maybe what Zu said a bit early in terms of local initiative, and one of the key leaders, because African institution, and you are thinking that it can be the way to materialize Pan-Africanism or materialize Ubuntu, you will be disappointed, because this big institution is not all the time in accordance or in the same political line that the people. So it is a local initiative where you can find a concrete solution. For example, if you take Thomas Sankara in Burkina Faso, for example, it was at his time when he was in the power to, for example, work a lot to create space so that women can be in the government, in a lot of administration. So at this time, it was already people fighting for more place, fighting to change the mindset of the, you know, the Burkinabe. At this time, it was Haute Volta to come with, you know, that kind of open space, more space women to grow and to express their view. Also, if you take, for example, leader, Pan-African leader like Amilcar Cabral, who were very involved in rural development in his country, and concerning climate change, we, as a bit I described, we face a situation where there are a lot of threats, maybe double or more on the women in rural community. Because, for example, if you go in some of the village in West Africa, and I think it is common in a lot of village in Africa, this agriculture, the small agriculture who feed the nation, who feed the community, like grow some kind of vegetable, some kind of, you know, tomato, this kind of thing, who is very important. It is, you know, under the leadership of women, because that man would like, for example, to grow, you know, instead of doing, you know, vegetable, who is very important because it can help a lot the community. You will also face in some villages that the women are the one, you know, doing that small chicken farm, you know, local chicken farm, who is very important to the feeding of the family, to the feeding of the men. And we have to work more to help that woman to have this autonomy. You know, today, for example, if you go in the debate concerning climate change, you will see that most of the debate, or most of the, you know, decision making is under the direction of the men, because they are the one maybe at the top of the administration, but they don't have this sensitivity concerning how to include gender specificity. Ecofeminism is the taking of the political decision, and that is something we undermine the woman. It's undermined because with that sensitivity from women, with that sensitivity from the fact that at the all the time that they are thinking about climate change, for example, they are thinking about how to get access to water for the family, how to get access to seed, to good seeds, to seed, you know, who will not allow or who will not undermine the agriculture, because you will need all the fertilizer, all the chemical to grow the food. They are the one taking care of the seed, taking care of the small scale, you know, agriculture, activity. So for me, when we talk about climate change, we need to analyze the fact that there are a double, you know, threat on the women, and we need to come with concrete, you know, case to help them. I already spoke about the energy issue, how for community impacted by coal plant or big dams. The first threat, or this first undermine is on the shoulder of the women, because they are the one, you know, related to the community and have this sensitivity. So that is a bit the feeling I would like to share.
Thank you very much, Ange David. Zoe, would you like to add?
Yes, let me start by thanking Ange, because that's exactly why we decided to invite him, because we know he would advocate for women. So thanks so much for the solidarity, my brother. I think the question of climate change and more broadly, the question of the ecological crisis that we are facing is of critical importance. And that is why in WoMin, we have decided to do more work around Ubuntu. Because, and I think I mentioned this in my presentation, there is Ubuntu for humanity, but there is also Ubuntu for the environment. And this has to do with the climate and the ecological crisis. More than ever, we need Ubuntu to be able to move away from the destructive practices and policies that have taken us to the current state of multi-layered and interconnected crisis. We know that COVID-19 is directly linked to the ecological crisis. So yeah, Ubuntu is telling us, it is prescribing us, it is ordering us as a moral obligation to be more careful and to discharge our responsibilities for the protection of the environment and for the protection of Mother Earth. That is also a very important part of Ubuntu. And that is why, as WoMin, we have decided to put it at the center of our work around ecofeminist development alternatives.
There's a question that follows up really well to that one, and it was from an audience member who wanted to understand how can other parts of the world learn how to live in harmony, of Ubuntu. So sort of giving some guidance elsewhere. We know there are other practices and philosophies around the world that are similar, but if you can share some thoughts on that, any or all three of you.
I think I let my colleagues share, especially since they are actually practicing what should be done already. So,
Nonhle, maybe I can ask you to
I think
start.
Nonhle can start, and yeah, I have a couple ideas, but.
So Nonhle, if you want to maybe, you've described for us really well how the community lives through Ubuntu. What would you give advice to other places in the world in how they could start practicing those ways of being?
To practice Ubuntu or to keep Ubuntu, it's very simple. What I can say, as many things are very difficult, but that one is the most simplest one. But the problem is that although it's simple, the pressure is the capitalism. Capitalism hates Ubuntu. They don't want to see Ubuntu. Now, the pressure that it always goes straight to our people, it breaks that chain of Ubuntu easily, because our people have been promised earth and heaven. And then later they just realize that no, there was no earth and heaven, that they will get it. But in order to live like that, you must appreciate what you have. You must appreciate where you live. You must understand who you are. You must understand your background. You must understand your identity. The problem, people, they just lost Ubuntu because they lost their own identity. Once you don't know who you are, you don't recognize, you don't appreciate who you are, it's very easy Ubuntu to just disappear. As I said, that I'm proudly Pondo myself. Pondo is one of the tribe here in South Africa. Is known of because of the apartheid era. That it's, if people, you call yourself a Pondo, people they said no, Pondos are uneducated, nobody want to associate. You know, those stigmas as well. It's part of a brainwash to our minds that we need to shift to do something that it will be no longer sitting with us. That is why I said Ubuntu is very important. Once Ubuntu is there, I promise, your life is very simple because Ubuntu, you're sharing, even laughing, you know, when you see your neighbor, you know everybody. And when you're sick, you know, you share the sick, you share the joy, you share everything. When I mean everything, it's not only you share the good things, even the painful parts. You know, when people, they say, oh, on that family, if somebody's not feeling well, people are just coming and see how can they help. You know, that's what is called Ubuntu. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nonhle. Ange David, you wanted to add a few points?
Yeah, thank you to Nonhle, because one of the points she described is so very well in accord. For example, when she said that when, for example, a kid can go in the neighboring, house, and there they can also take care of the kid as it is, their own kid. That is a very inspirational, things to design Ubuntu, because if, for example, this foreign company continue coming in Africa, grabbing the land, stealing the resource, take off our gold, our diamond, all these resources to go back and develop themselves without consideration of that local community, it comes with a lot of disorder in the in the area, and that will undermine Ubuntu spirit. That will undermine the community, because, for example, a lot of the child or a lot of the citizen will go to the town or to the city because they are not anymore a good situation of living in their village. For example, the village of Nonhle is now targeted by foreign company, by people just want to grab or just want to come and do mining without any consideration of the people to how they can use their land to feed themselves and also to feed the communities, So kind of attitude like that will undermine Ubuntu, will destroy Ubuntu. So for the people who want to is to be, engaged in the society, engaged in the world, to support the small scale farmers, to support the small scale vendors, to support the small scale, fishermen. That is under this kind of practice, this kind of attitude, they also support Ubuntu, because it is a consideration of human being in our society. That is the point I would like to add. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ange David. I just want to also just raise that we had a little bit of a break in the Spanish translation, and we have to say a very big thank you to Ana Cecilia Dinestein, who's been doing it on her own throughout the session. So hopefully it is working now. We have Yukini, who has also volunteered to help us to make that go through. And we have many more questions coming, but also not that much time left. So I hope it's okay with everyone if we keep going until about 15:15, but 15 minutes over the time. But yeah, you are also obviously welcome to leave as you need to. I hope our speakers can continue with us for a bit longer. I'm going to ask the next question, which... Sorry, Ashish?
Sorry to interrupt, but just make sure that the Spanish is working.
Yeah. Can someone who's in the Spanish one just confirm that it's working? I think Anna Cecilia is back and is continuing to do a good job for us.
It's fine.
Yeah, okay, good, thanks. So I move on to a slightly broader...
Yokini is also in the room. I don't know whether she's able to speak or not.
Okay. Maybe Ashish, you can communicate with Anastasia and Yukini.
Yukini, can you speak
Yeah,
Spanish?
she is in the room, so maybe she can be brought out because Anna Cecilia is already
Yes,
there.
that's fine. I think it's working. Yukini, go ahead.
Okay, good. So I will continue with the questions to Nonhle and Ange David, and this is a one about the education systems and whether the education systems across Africa are reinforcing the neoliberal worldview or whether there are places where philosophies of Ubuntu are being taught. And it's related also to the fact of these discussions about decolonizing universities and schools that are happening in the UK. Obviously, we know that this has also been sparked by what has happened in South Africa with the Rhodes Must Fall movement. But maybe if you could comment, speakers, on the education systems that we have in Africa, whether they are reinforcing the neoliberal worldview or whether there is space for philosophies of Ubuntu.
Yes,
maybe I can start first, or Zu. Okay, Zu.
Okay, anyway, I'll be very brief because I'm not aware of significant initiatives to integrate Ubuntu into the African education system. I might be wrong, but I'm sure of if there was something like that, I would know about it. But so far I have not heard. So in my view, it's not, and it should be. It's part of the work that is ahead of us if we want to come up with a post-activist, extractivist future and future generations who embrace
futuras generaciones necesitamos esto.
I think we have a switch of speakers. So can you continue again and hopefully, yeah. Zoe, you are muted?
I was muted all the time?
Oh. No, we could hear you at the beginning.
Okay, so I was saying that I do not pretend that I know everything about the African education system, which is also not an homogeneous one. Each country has its own system, of course.
Cada país tiene un sistema, pero...
I'm hearing the interpretation, so...
Yeah, Ashish, we're getting the Spanish interpretation.
Yukini, are you trying to speak Spanish? Because I removed Ana Cecilia from the room, which is why her voice will come in the main room now. Yukini,
I don't know.
Okay.
Ana Cecilia, don't.
Whatever
you
want.
can stop.
I think.
Yukini, can you speak in Spanish? Let's. No, so we're requesting Anna to stop now. If you can take over.
Okay.
Yeah, carry on.
So I think we will continue, and I mean, just in the interest of time, Zoe, I mean, I think your point is really important. There isn't a lot of it. One of the people in the chat has added that in Kenya at the law school, they have been teaching Ubuntu philosophy there, which is good to hear. And then maybe Ange David, if you wanted to add as well.
Yeah, do you hear me? I can maybe quickly.
Yes.
I agree with the fact that the education system we face in a lot of in Africa, in West Africa, is not appropriate if we want to fight against continental free trade or, you know, all this neoliberal system. It is not appropriate, because you can easily find some country where they don't teach, or they don't learn about slavery. They don't learn about the, you know, because it is part of our history. For example, in slavery, we have to talk it, we have to discuss, we have to, you know, to change, to exchange. You can go in some university where, for example, they don't want to talk about imperialism, but we need to understand slavery, imperialist, neoliberal system, all these kind of things. So for me, we have as activists to try to think what kind of educational system we need to bring to change the mindset for the future generation, because it is not appropriate, and it is a system, education system, who perpetuate, you know, kind of attitude like the one we saw with George Floyd's assassination. It is very key to think about the new educational system, who is related to our reality, who is in accord with our values. And one of our values, very important, is Ubuntu, how we can share among us the seeds, how we can share, you know, this, maybe the chicken, how we can share the food. You know, that is very important for us. We need to change the mindset. We need to change the education, because education is key. Without education, we can't have value for our children. It's not possible without new thinking to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure how much more time we have, but I think there's two important questions that I want to pick up on. The first one is, perhaps in the Western discourse of Ubuntu, there's always this concern about it still being embedded with patriarchy. And so one of the questions is that both Ubuntu and patriarchy are traditional, existing for a long time. Are they not contradictory? Or does Ubuntu in some way incorporate patriarchy? How does that tension work out? And then there's a suggestion in that question that ecofeminism is perhaps a modern movement to counter patriarchy and ecological devastation. So is the alternative about putting tradition and modernity together? So just to reflect a bit on this question of patriarchy and Ubuntu as two traditions that exist.
Okay, I'm not pretending that I'm going to settle the issue here, but I'm just trying to throw some ideas that might help in dealing with this tension. I think I have the same position about Ubuntu as I have articulated for my vision of Pan-Africanism in terms of a process in construction that needs to come from people themselves. My take about really living Ubuntu as an ecofeminist is really about, how would I say that? Reinterpreting the way in which I express and I embrace the values embedded in Ubuntu in a way that is emancipatory, and in a way that is about liberation, and in a way that is still about solidarity, but without domination. I think, again, we just don't take Ubuntu as something that you can cut and paste in your life and in your ways of being. It is something that you need to reinterpret and to adapt to your own life. That's how I see it.
Maybe I could also follow up on another question that's related, but to Nonhle, about how women have been challenging, the patriarchal and traditional systems, and, also how men have responded to this. So, Nonhle, if you would be willing to share your experience, especially with the Amadiba Crisis Committee.
Yeah, yes. Challenging the patriarchy. Patriarchy is like something that it's like a curse, actually, because right now, even if we said that we are equal in terms of the law, but when it comes to do tangible things, or to lead, or to a leadership, we are so unequal. And it's still that, I don't know in other countries, but in South Africa, you can see that people, they don't want to admit that the women can lead. That is the most challenge right now. If they see the leadership from the woman, you've been named, you've been called all sorts of stuff. But I still go back where I come from, how we've been taught about patriarchy. Many, as I'm coming from the traditional society, where many tribes, they don't recognize that the woman can lead. But in my tribe, where I come from, I don't know how did they learn this, and I still need to do a research, because we have so many female chiefs in our tribe in Pondoland, but in other tribes, you never find one. That is why you can see it's only one-sided, but we are still saying that we are equal, we are 50-50. To challenge that, also education is very important, because what we learn from school, is it relevant to where we live? I don't think so. The kind of education, it doesn't speak to us, it speaks to somebody else. If we challenge that, people, our kids at school, they learn what it speaks to us, it will help us a lot. I make an example of myself. When I was at school, I was planning to study history, but I was being forced to study economics, because they said that you need to be an accountant. Do I want to be an accountant? Because when I look at my home village, there's no banks, there's nothing, there's gardens, you see. But I want to learn history, where I can talk about where we come from, why we ended up protecting the land. But the education system is so being colonized, even the education system. If the education, it did speak to us, we're going to have a problem, because the kids that are coming from universities, they can't fit to our communities, because the kind of education they get from university, it's not there in our communities. We're having a clash with the universities, because they just see, they learn that when you study, you need to get a job, but not to utilize the resources that is surrounding you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nonhle. It is now 5 minutes, and I think we will take the very last question before we close this session. And it is a question that several people have asked about: how can feminist global solidarity support people's self-determination and right to say no? A lot of people have asked, how do we support and be good accomplices and allies in these struggles? So if there's any final thoughts that the three of you would like to make to this audience, but also for all of us to think about in terms of global solidarity.
Mm-hmm. From my side, I think global solidarity is key in our work, to keep the land, to keep the resources, to stay, in healthy with our community, our family. And maybe we have to perpetuate this solidarity thinking. The relationship with our allies is very key. It is important, and we have to find a way, to do it, because Ubuntu is not something granted. We have to. It is a perpetual fight. We have to every day take care of our mother earth, take care of our community. So that is the place where we can move forward. So the solidarity is a key, and I think it have to do with our humanity. Thank you.
I think I cannot agree more with Ange that we need solidarity, which is also a essential value of within Ubuntu. But I have a very specific recommendation for allies from the global north. I think you should stop trying to build our capacity. I mean, coming to the global south to build the capacity of women's organization and civil society organizations there. But what you should do more instead is to lobby your own government and your own corporations so that they leave us alone. I mean, by leaving us alone, I mean so that they stop, the neo-imperialist kind of policies, and also the extractivist development project that they are supporting in our region of the world. So yeah, please do that, and let us lobby our own government.
Nonhle, is there any final words that you would like to add?
What I want to say, let's remember one thing. We eat food, not minerals. If we remember that, we eat food. Food is our priority. That's how we're going to protect land. If we think we eat money, we are lying ourselves. This is the kind of education that we need to teach our own kids, that the food that is sitting in the shelf is coming from the land. Thank you.
This has been an incredibly rich and full and inspiring discussion. As a South African who's currently sitting in Copenhagen, I have to say how proud I feel, but also how much I long to actually be there more. And it's really to say thank you to our three speakers, but also just to remind the audience, many of you know that last year in October, we lost one of the mothers of the struggle in South Africa. Fikile and Changase was killed because of the work she was doing. So this is a very real fight that WoMin and all the activist groups are taking up. And so I think it is important for us to think about the struggle that is happening, but also to hold on to the vision that our three speakers have taught us and shared with us today. So to say a very big thank you to Zoe for helping set this up and put things together, and WoMin, to Ange, David, and Nonhle for being part of this conversation with us. and to all of the participants who have joined us today. I would like to ask those people who are still here if you could put on your cameras just for a moment so we can at least see people and have a moment to say thank you and goodbye to everyone.
Thanks to all the translators also.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, and huge thank you to the translators, Anna Cecilia,
Yes.
for trying to do that, John for doing it, Natalie, and Yukini for also joining in.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Nonhle.
Bye. Bye.